question.
Okay. So I'm going to read a couple of the responses first, and then I want to get into what you think. I feel like, well, actually it's not unanimous, but we'll start with a couple of them. First, not really, unless you've made it clear that you're not interested, then yes. So there's caveats. Someone said when they ghost you in real life, but only act like you exist through text. Oof. I feel like there's a story behind that one.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, personal. If they won't leave you alone, don't open that up again. It's not worth it. Only if they're a total creep and they don't leave you alone. These are all like women commenting like, I had a creepy guy.
Oh my gosh.
Someone said a therapist you don't feel comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Interesting. Yeah.
That's a very specific.
That is.
I don't know. How would you feel? I mean, I'm like, it depends. I'm like, what is like uncomfortable as in they cross lines and they're like a speech therapist who should have their license taken away, or like you just don't vibe?
Because first of all, I think safety, always yes.
Always, yeah.
Always, and that includes a therapist. Like even therapists can cross boundaries. I've had that happen. I've had to go to a therapist.
Really?
I have. They're actually a clinical assistant, so not technically a therapist, but in a therapy role. And definitely had to ghost him.
I didn't know.
He tried to date me.
Oh my
gosh!
And you're like, after I've given you all of my problems, like, no, thank you.
And my address.
Ew.
And all my personal information. So no. I think
that's like so invasive. I hate that.
Yeah.
Mm,
so okay.
That's
a situation where I think that's totally appropriate. And I think like that question, like, is it okay? I think it depends on what okay means, because like moral, maybe depends. I think it's really a better question might be, is it effective? Like effective for your goals in dating. Like are your goals in dating to be able to find someone that you want to be with? Is your goal in dating just to like go on as many dates as possible? I think that depending what your goal is, like what's effective might be different, right?
Okay.
And so if your goal is generally to be like a nice person who like, keeps up friendships in his time,
with communication,
then it's probably not effective to ghost someone. Like there's always going to be more effective ways, I think, to say that. Like even just things like, hey, had so much fun, don't really see this working out, best of luck, swiping, right? It can be something super short and brief, doesn't have to be major. But I think that's probably going to be more effective. It is going to be more comfortable, maybe, than ghosting. And I think that might be a good exposure for some people, too, even without OCD.
Yeah.
I had to do a lot of, like, exposures like that. But I also had to do some exposures ghosting because I was so scared.
Of, like, hurting
I was so scared of hurting someone's feelings that I had to, like...
intentionally ghost.
My therapist would have me swipe on people who I intentionally knew I would not be compatible with, just so that I could get practice at saying no thank you.
At rejecting.
I had 5 dating apps when I was in therapy because I would just be sitting there.
But how many of us, especially if you have OCD, have like been like, you like morally feel like obligated,
or just as women,
or even as women,
I think there's
like,
a lot of pressure there.
I even think like back to, and I mean, I hope they've changed this now, but at EFY, when it was like, you had to say yes.
Yeah, or
to like being courted
and they're like, you can't say no to someone, it'll hurt their feelings and ruin their self-esteem.
Yeah, as opposed to like...
Yeah, we don't learn consent.
Autonomy, and consent, it was like, you have to say yes. So I think a lot of us are like, well, as long as they're not mean, I have to say yes.
Yeah. And I would venture to say you're really under no moral obligation to talk to anyone. It's
true.
No one's entitled to that. It's just about what your goals are. Or is your goal to, maintain face if you see them at the grocery store, you want to be able to give them a nod and not feel super uncomfortable. Like, and you want to make sure that they feel like you respected their time. Don't ghost them. Mm-hmm. If that's not your priority, you do you.
Keep it in line with priorities.
Right?
That was something my therapist, like with my ex, I'd like gotten to a point where I was trying to go no contact, but then he pretended he wanted to work on things, and I remember feeling so guilty and kept telling my therapist but I need to like keep reaching out or keep and it was like, your time is yours.
Yeah
You are an autonomous human being. You decide what you want. He has no like ownership over you. And like that was the first time I'd like heard that, and I was like, oh. Yeah. Even with people I had pre-established relationships with, like I didn't owe that to him.
Right.
It was really, what do I
Right.
want? What's my character? What do,
Yeah, what are the goals?
Some other answers, yeah, but it's often more generous to tell a guy what you don't like about him. I wouldn't.
I don't know that you always need to. I think sometimes also, that's also something that, a compulsion of mine was urge to confess. I would over-explain things, and I'd be like, here's all the reasons, bullet point A. And like,
so
you
I'm not lying.
You don't always need to say
everything.
that. You don't need to justify saying no. Sometimes it's more effective. Again, it comes down to, I love the word effective, because I'm like, so many people are like, is it normal, or is it like healthy or whatever? And it's like, is it effective? Like, is it what's going to get you towards what you're looking for? And I think it's better than is it right or wrong? And so, yeah, it's like, it might be it is. If he's asking for it, you can maybe tell him, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's okay just to,
sometimes
you're not compatible.
Like, yeah, sometimes it's better just to be like, yeah, we don't work out. Or, I mean, like, there's certain situations where I'm like, what am I supposed to tell you? Like, there was literally a guy where it was like, he didn't like movies, and I'm an actress, and there's nothing wrong with him not liking
totally
movies.
Fine.
But
like, not for you.
He didn't ask, and so I wasn't gonna be like, well, actually, like, you didn't like movies, and like, once you said that, I lost all attraction for you, and it didn't matter how many abs you had. Like I could be completely honest and list out every you know what I mean? But there's certain ones where it's like,
it doesn't matter usually.
But there's sometimes, like, if they ask, if it's not, I don't know, but there's certain times there will be people who will ask, like, why? Not because they want to know and, like, improve, but because it's, like, they want to prove you wrong. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm always in favor of, like, with boundaries, keeping it as short and as sweet as possible. And even when it comes to boundary setting, we like, can think about it in terms of what our priority is in the conversation. Is the priority to maintain the relationship, or is it to, like, assert self-respect, right? Mm-hmm. And depending, we're going to set it differently. If it's, like, to maintain a relationship, I might tell you what's going on. I might tell you all the reasons, right? Yeah. If it's someone on the street, someone I met on a date one time, I might not, right? Yeah. Like, it totally comes down to, like, what the relationship is and how you want to maintain it. If you don't want to maintain a relationship with them, you aren't responsible for fixing them, right? And you aren't in any relationship, but, like, you don't need to try to, like, fix them or tell them what they need to do better, because that might not be what they're looking for. They might be not looking for self-improvement, right? They might just be looking for you to go on another date with them, and in which case they can use all your arguments of what they need to improve on to say, okay, I like movies now, you know? That's not what you're going for. Yeah. Like, we are, it's true. I love that. Yeah, I like that reframing. I've never heard it put that way, but I think it's, again, like, prioritizing what your, what did you say? Effectiveness.
Yeah. But I mean, it sucks. I've been ghosted after, like, dating someone for 2 months. Oh. And that sucked. Like, ended up working, like, we were able to, like, talk through it and recognize he had, like, some things come up that, like, he really needed to work through. It wasn't, like, personal, but obviously we weren't gonna date after that. Yeah. But, like, yeah,
did you have to end up reaching out? Did they reach out?
He did. And yeah, I had like some trauma resurface and things that, like, I had lots of compassion for, but also was like, yeah, but, you know, we've been dating for 2 months. We can't do that. That's not effective.
Do you think if he had reached out and let you know, the relationship would have continued, or was that just going to get in the way anyways?
No, probably.
See, it's some situations where you're like,
and, like, yeah, and it's something you can have so much compassion for, but it's still like, it hurts. It's not fun. Like, yeah, I'm definitely in favor of not ghosting if it can be avoided. Yeah. But, yeah.
But there are some situations, as people talk about, I mean, I think often, like, when people ghost, just out of, like, I don't really want to get into it. It's just, like, it's uncomfortable, and then it's hard.
Well, I think as a society, we're not really good at letting, you know, that, like, thing I shared earlier about, like, our stress goes up and eventually comes down. Yes. Like, even people without OCD still have obsessions and compulsions. It's just not at a clinical state where, like, it's impacting their day-to-day life. But we still do that all the time. We're like, oh, this is uncomfortable. I'm going to get rid of it before I have to deal. Yeah. And that's, like, every human does that. And it happens a ton in dating where it's like, oh, I feel uncomfortable. And instead of letting it peak by, like, telling them why I don't want to go out with them, I'm just going to go because I'm going to get rid of the distress really quickly. And, like, we can totally do that. It's just not always kind to the other person. It doesn't always help us, like, to move forward in our own dating.
And we also will just continue to do it.
Right.
Like, it doesn't really help anyone.
Yeah, it doesn't help either side.
Someone else says, Yeah, so I guess in regards to like generous to tell a guy what you don't like about him, I'm like, well, it depends. It depends if they're asking.
And it depends if you went on
But,
one
like-
date with them or like multiple. And if they did something that was disrespectful to you
Yeah.
as a human, maybe you do want to tell them. If it's just like you
He's
don't like their
stop.
hair, like move along.
Then that's just kind of like, it's just kind of mean, and someone else is gonna like their hair, so, you know.
Yeah, if it's about compatibility, like I don't think you need to say.
Yeah. Someone says, ghost after setting boundaries and clearly communicating. Some people won't take a no. I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the same thing, like, with certain people, you have to set a physical boundary where you cannot be around them if they continue to disrespect emotional ones. And there's been many instances where I've had guys where it's been like, no, not interested, no, please don't contact, you know, and they'll just continue. And it's like, I'm not going to keep re-explaining the same thing.
Well, and boundaries aren't always verbal. Ghosting is a boundary. It's you saying you don't have access to me, right?
Yes.
You can do that. Again, it's just not always most effective. I keep saying that in time, but like it's not always what's most effective,
Yes.
right?
I think in
But it's
many
still a
cases
boundary.
you do when it's not. But there's certain cases where I'm like, you kind of have to.
Right.
I can't see any reason to not communicate the end of a relationship and express why. I think everyone's taking the ghosting too as like a romantic thing, which I'm like, it's not always.
It's not always.
That way.
Yeah, it could be like a business partnership, could be anything.
Yeah. I think in business things, I feel like there's not as, well, I guess that's not true. I feel like it's hard though, like in business settings when people just like ghost randomly and you're like, what happened?
Yeah.
In like a professional setting, you're like, what do I do?
Yeah, it's the
I don't know.
worst.
When it's like dating, it's like, okay, well, we probably weren't compatible. But when it's like
Right.
a business thing, you're like, help. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell him straight up and then ghost him. If he keeps it up after that, it's a misdemeanor. Okay, oh, this is like a three-parter. Wait, okay, hold on. So funny story, I was being stalked, but because I replied to his text instead of ghosting him, none of what he said counted against him in court.
Oh.
Oh.
Huh.
She continues. Basically, if you are uncomfortable or uninterested, then tell him straight up and then ghost him. If he keeps it up after that, it's a misdemeanor.
Interesting.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well,
I didn't think
actually,
about
I did know to an extent. So I knew I had been advised, like, if I'd been told if I had set a boundary with my ex and he continued, you know, in text to repeatedly harass or stalk or find me when I specifically stated, do not do that, do not track me, do not continue to contact me, and he did it a certain amount of times without me responding, then it held up in court.
Interesting.
So I guess I knew that.
Yeah.
But I didn't even think about that in
About
regards
response,
to like
yeah.
even just in like dating. That people
One thing
get
I'm
scary.
thinking about too though is like I think a lot of times when someone is like setting a boundary, like I'm not interested and then they're ghosting, I think sometimes also we aren't honest with ourselves when we set boundaries and it might be like, I'd love to be friends or I'd love to still, you know, like we'll say something that's very an empty gesture. And in
Just
those
to,
cases,
like,
I think
smooth it over when it's not true.
when it's not truthful. And I think that also sometimes leads people also like continuing to try to engage with you because you said that. And I feel like in those settings, I don't think you should really ghost. I think you should say what you mean. Do you know what I mean?
That's
Because I'm saying
true.
this not to like give advice to other people. I'm saying this to myself. Like every once in a while, I've said things like, "Oh yeah, it would be like so nice to, you know, do something else in a friendship setting or whatever."
Hang.
And it's like if that's not how you feel, and then you just know you're going to be ghosting them, like that's not going to help
gonna
you out.
disingenuous.
Like just say it straight up. Like I wish you the best of luck.
Or there's times, I guess in the inverse of that, when people are like, if they're breaking up with someone, they're like, oh, like, we should stay friends, not because they want to stay friends, but because they want it to be more than friends.
Right.
And they're just using that, like,
Yeah.
like, in that instance, they should end.
Well, sometimes
the
it's getting rid of
conversation.
their own distress. Sometimes it's getting rid of
Yeah.
other person's, and sometimes it's getting rid of their own. Like trying to be like, this is not as serious of a breakup as it is, or it's not as significant. And it's that same idea of like, we try to avoid the peak. We just try to get rid of our distress before it actually like runs its course.
Yes, and we're just stopping the grieving process and just going, okay, like, well, we're friends, we're still in contact, when really it's like, that's not what I want. I'm just gonna say that and stay in contact, when in reality it might be better to just go, okay, expressed it, moving on, we're done.
Yeah.
Someone says, it's okay if you set boundaries about not wanting a relationship and they won't listen. This seems to be like fairly common.
Consensus, yeah.
Yes, but it's just better that way. Or if the person you are talking to makes you feel uncomfortable or unsafe. Again, safety is a huge thing. There's multiple of these. Let's see if there's anyone that says, when the person is unhealthy for you. And I guess that's like, well, what does that mean? I guess it really just means, in my mind, I'm like, if they're unhealthy for you, it's like, where's the line between that and uncompatibility? Are they toxic? Are they abusive?
What does that look like? Well, and I think like the phrasing too, like people might be responding to it differently. Like, is it okay? Because like I said, they might be thinking about it like affected. They might be thinking about it like, is it nice? You know, like I think people could have different impressions of what that means altogether.
Yeah.
And so I think that could also change like their opinion on what it is. Yeah.
Because I'm like, there's certain people who I'm like, we happen to be the wrong combination of things, but they might still be owed an answer if they're a person that can hear it.
Right.
And like they're still safe, but maybe like we just are not healthy together as a pair or as a friendship or whatever.
Yeah.
When it's on accident because I get distracted.
Oh, me.
I know, me too. It's like, I relate to this one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now I'm like thinking about people I haven't texted.
I'm like, well, there's like intentional ghosting, and then there's like, the amount of times I've like texted someone in my head.
Yeah.
And then literally been like, why didn't they text me?
Me too.
And been like bitter about it, and then like checked and realized I never sent the text. And I was like, oh, I'm a horrible person. It's like, I sent them this long thing, and I was like, it never sent. I just thought about it. Like, I thought about it for days, trying to come up with the right response, and then just
okay, but actually, this is an interesting way it intersects with OCD, too, because that happens a lot. People might be trying to be so perfect or, like, not cause any harm, that they might be spending so long wording it that they might just rather ghost as a compulsion, or they might do things like tell way too much or, like, try to engage with people who might not be safe.
Yes. Oh, it's such a good point. And the thing is, like, it ends up, like, biting you in the butt, but, like, the amount of times where I'm like, well, someone sent like this many lines of dialogue, so okay, so I have to make sure
the same amount
or more, but I can't send less, but I can't do it flippantly because that's not thoughtful. I'm a bad friend, and then I just never end up sending anything, and it's like, well, that's not better. And
I know you said on Instagram that's something that you're like working on too, right?
Yes.
You're working on doing like the more like haphazard
just sending
it. That's so great.
Yeah,
it's a great exposure.
It is. It sucks, but
it's hard.
I'm doing it. More people are just like, if they're creepy or weird. Someone said, if you don't want to see them anymore. And I'm like it would be better to explain, but I think also a lot of us have just like ghosted someone at some point. And they're like, oh, I should have been more mature.
Right.
Let's see if there's anything else different. Creepy, if they're creepy, if they're not safe.
Well, I also wonder if this is even just like after a date or if it's like after talking on a dating app or because I definitely have like ghosted people on dating apps that like, but I'm better at not doing it like after a date or after like getting to know them.
Well, like once you have like some in person, I don't know, maybe that shouldn't.
But I feel like that like might factor into that question too. Is like, how well do you know them?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm like, if I were the best person I could be, I'd be like, I'd never ghost anyone unless they were unsafe, but I can't say that I've always done that. Especially on dating apps when you like, it just like kind of dehumanizes people where it's just like, there's just so much that you're like, I don't know, I just have to pick somebody and respond and at least go on a date and, you know, so I don't know. Yeah, I don't think there's anything new. Oh, someone says under 3 dates you can ghost. Oh. I don't feel like you owe them anything prior. Very specific.
Interesting, yeah.
Everyone else is kind of saying the same thing, but this is like
It sounds like it depends.
Yeah.
Like, that's what sum it up. Like, yeah.
This person has a specific number. It's like, before that, I don't know. But after that, it's like,
that's really interesting. 3 dates.
Yeah.
Huh.
I could see that. I'm like, that's a good number. I'm like, if I were a better person, I wouldn't ever. But anyways. But it sounds like you've ghosted before.
It's a struggle. I try, there's been like, I used to more with when my OCD was really bad too, because of all those things we talked about. I feel like I'm better at it now, except for that now I'm more busy. And like, now the ADHD without the OCD. That's
now that you've solved one thing.
And so now it's like, it's hard.
I didn't text you in 6 months, and last time it was because of OCD, but now
it's
still
different.
a good reason. It's just a different problem.
Yeah, let's see.
Anyways, I think that wraps up. Thank you guys for joining us. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So fun. And I will be placing all of the links and all the information if you want to find this lovely human being online. Thank you.
This was a Titan Media Collective production.